Now, you also had to do some patient advocacy for them. Can you explain what is patient advocacy?
It can be anything. It can be anything from questioning why my mom had to stay just before we brought her home for palliative care. She had to stay in the hospital, and that's when they determined that she was palliative because she had a growth on her kidney and had fractured her knee somehow. She had bone issues, so I don't even know how she fractured her knee, but anyway. And so, and they were talking about that, and so probably the biggest piece of advocacy was that they wanted her to stay in hospital. And I said, I think maybe we're going to set things up and we're going to bring her home. And they didn't necessarily appreciate that, but one morning I came in, it was after morning, and her breakfast tray was sitting there untouched, and I said to the nurse, why is it that her breakfast tray hasn't been touched? And she said, oh, she refused it, which, having worked in the system, I understand that sometimes people do say, no, I don't want it. And you try and persuade them gently. You don't force them, obviously, but you try and persuade them gently. And if they really are adamant, they don't want it, then you just leave it. But in this case, I knew for a fact that that wasn't the situation. First of all, they hadn't taken the lids off anything, and whatever. So I said to the nurse, why is it that she hasn't had her tray? And they said, oh, she refused it. And I said, I'm not sure that's true. I said, it hasn't even been attempted. So she checked, because of course they have to document all of that information, and I know that as well. So she came back and she apologized. She said, no one did try and feed her. So, from things like, a breakfast tray to palliative care to all that kind of thing, you have to speak up and not be afraid. People do their jobs, some do it better than others. And so, if unfortunately in the system you get someone who's not doing their job as well as they could, you have to speak up. And also there is a shortage of, we hear it on the news constantly, there's a shortage of staff. And so those who are doing their job and working hard are, overburdened and that sort of thing. One of the things that came out during the pandemic was the whole issue of, the shortage in long-term care. That didn't surprise me at all because the volunteers and family members do a ton of work in long-term care. And when they were locked out and not able to come in, that piece of it was missing. And so that's when it really showed that there were huge gaps in the system. So be nice to them when you're being interviewed. So.
I'm also curious, how do you do patient advocacy? How do you advocate on behalf of a patient effectively?
Well, it depends what you're advocating, but I've always found that the more gentle approach works better than, sort of storming in and saying, why aren't you doing this? Works best. You need to make sure that you have all the facts as well. We used to run into things when I was working in long-term care. We used to run into issues because sometimes things are written in their care plan, and if you're not aware of that issue in the care plan and you're saying, well, you hear this person saying, help me, help me, help me, over and over and over again, and you're thinking, why is no one helping this person? You sort of have to see that some of the issues are that this is going to happen no matter what. And so it's not that she's being, or that person is being neglected, it's that this is a behavior and they're dealing with it in a certain way. So you have to have all those facts as well. But I do find the gentler approach, and then sometimes you may need to write to, politicians or whatever. In the case of long-term care, there may be times when you have to write to politicians and say, listen, this is happening. And
Can you say more about that?
Yes.
What happened at her home?
Without mentioning the name of it. Well, we found out certainly after she passed and we were cleaning out her stuff, we found out that there was an infestation of mice in there. We found a lot of mice droppings in her cedar chest and other things. And then we went to get what we could, and then they'd move the rest down to their garage. And when I went to get that, I found cockroaches crawling through her belongings. So to which I told them I would not take those things home. They would have to dispose of them. But yeah, so you knew that there was a cleanliness issue in there. But then even worse was my daughter got very involved in that after my mother died, in advocating for nursing home patients. And she found a video that had been done by CBC, and it talked about abuse in nursing homes, and they actually focused on my mother's nursing home. So, she used to tell me sometimes, well, they're very rough sometimes, and I thought it's another one of her complaints that is nothing, right? But perhaps she was telling me something, truth. And that's, part of the difficulty in the relationship was I didn't know when she was being honest and when she wasn't. So I kind of didn't really pay attention to those things. But the things I heard in that interview or that piece were very hard to hear.
What do you think? I mean, we know that abuse does take place in long-term care, and that they are, underfunded and understaffed, and that undertrained, and that there are concerns to be had. I'm curious about, in particular, what should people be watching out for, and what should people be listening for?
Well, certainly, I now knowing what I know, had she told me that, I would have probably tried to find somebody I could talk to about it. I mean, I did have a situation where I did get into a confrontation with the nursing home. My mother lost a lot of weight after she left her house, and so I had to buy her some new clothes to fit her because everything was falling off. And I brought her several little outfits at Value Village and brought them to her. And they took them to the laundry, and when I went back the next week, a lot of it was missing. And I was like, wait a minute, what happened to this? I thank God I made a list of what I'd left. There's this, and this not there. And I spoke to the laundry department, and they said, oh, we don't know, because not us. And I said, no. Finally went down and spoke to the manager down there and said, you need to find this stuff because it's been stolen. And if you do not find it, unfortunately, I'm going to have to call the police to have this looked into. They found her clothes pretty quick.
What's it like being a patient advocate in that way?
For me, it's hard because I'm not a person that likes to rock the boat too much, unless I feel like I'm justified. And I had no idea it was going there, so I didn't really feel justified, but at that point I had to say something because I wasn't going to go take more of her money to go buy more clothes, especially when she had them. So.
Yeah, so you were feeling, you didn't want to rock the boat, you didn't want to sort of have confrontation. What enabled you to what is it sort of within you, or yeah, where did it come from that you were able to have that conversation?
Because I did realize, once I accepted that it had been stolen, not lost somewhere, but it had actually been stolen, then I could go and do what I had to do. But that's probably why I didn't notice the things that were going on around her, because again, I'm not one to try to confront people, so I let things go sometimes.
Do you have advice for other people?
As far as what?
Yeah, being an advocate.
Like I said, you need to listen, to look, to watch, to not take things at their word. Yeah, and just realize that they people in there often can't speak for themselves, or they're dismissed. So you need to be their eyes and ears and mouth.
What do you think that you have learned from being a caregiver for your mother?
I think one thing I've learned is I definitely have to advocate more for those I love. And I need to be more aware of what's happening, not just kind of push things aside and think I'm being difficult or demanding. Because that's part of what it is I just don't want to be seen as difficult or demanding, but sometimes you have to be. And you do what you can. Like, there's no, I mean, I do feel guilt, as I said, because of some of it. But really, I truly believe I did the best I could given the relationship and the circumstance I was in with her. And so I try to give myself a little bit of leeway on that.